was reading about this in the news this week, and it sounds horrific. People are essentially dumping their animals in record numbers.
Hi, Emily. Yes, unfortunately, that is the case. I think it's fair to say that on any typical year, we will see a lot of calls coming into our cruelty line. For example, last year we had 1 million calls that came through. But what we typically see once we come up to the summer holidays is an increase in that. So we'd normally see around 90,000 calls coming through. We expect we're going to get about 134,000 calls this summer, which ends up being around 3 a minute that we get. So it really is a dire situation. And unfortunately, those calls that we will get will cover a range of different issues, animals being killed, beaten and mutilated. So it's a really, really awful situation, hence why we're putting out our campaign to cancel out cruelty so that people become more aware of this.
And from your experience, how many of these pets that are now being dumped were lockdown purchases?
It's really difficult to actually say, which pets are being abandoned because of the lockdown situation and the pandemic. We don't really have the data that bears that out. I think what we can say is that for all of the rescue organisations at the beginning of the pandemic, we were hugely, hugely concerned about the number of people that found themselves at home with their children, a lot more time than what they'd normally have on their hands, and then went out and either bought or adopted pets. And I think sadly we are seeing now people with the return to work in some cases giving up those pets, but obviously it's being compounded by the cost of living crisis as well. And there are people genuinely really, really struggling. We did a survey earlier this year and we found out that nearly 20% of people were already starting to be worried about how they were going to feed their pets through this crisis. And, the worst may yet to become. So I think it's incredibly difficult for people. They're making very hard choices around who they feed, including family members, which are their pets. A lot of people, thankfully, do have a really good relationship with their pet and they're very, very important to their family.
And have you seen abuse of pets go up since the pandemic? Because, of course, we've read so much about how problem drinking has got worse, drug abuse, add to that financial concerns, which is often a lead cause of domestic abuse. Has all of that added to the situation where people are taking it out on their pets at home?
Well, we have seen an increase in calls, and I think that, again, it's always really, really difficult pulling apart all of the different factors and what actually leads to that increase in cruel behaviour. I think, typically over summer, we do tend to see an increase in the number of complaints that we get coming through to our cruelty line. And obviously we did see that partly during the lockdown as well, because obviously people were at home a lot more often. But it's often very, very difficult to attribute cause and effect. But I think, what we are really concerned about this year is this big increase that we're starting to see already. And just for an example, we've had more than 9% increase in people actually contacting our emergency hotline. So again, that can well be people that are concerned about their own pets and concerned about other people's pets as well.
And is that the best thing to do then, to call the helpline if you're worried, you're a pet owner, you've got a little dog and you're worried that you can't actually afford its upkeep? Should they give you a bell first or what?
So what we're actually saying to people is that there are a number of different options that can be explored if people are struggling with their pet. So, for example, one of the things that people might well be able to do is think about the food that they're feeding them, and is it possible to transition them slowly onto a cheaper food? But for people that really, really are struggling, what they do need to remember is that rescue organisations are there to help them. So if they are really worried about their pet, please do reach out and help. No one is going to judge them. People shouldn't feel ashamed or guilty that they're asking for help. These are incredibly difficult, unprecedented times, and we are here to help people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. That was, I hope that you can help all these animals, and I hope people are able to keep their pets despite the rising cost. It sounds a pretty difficult situation for many pet owners.